Good morning, third graders. Hope you're having a great day. Um, Today for Reading Workshop, we're going to have a lesson that's going to seem very similar to one we had last week. Last week, we talked a little bit about thinking about when characters act out of character. Remember, I told you this story about the day that Teddy decided not to be shy. He was just like, let me go meet all of these friends in the park, like Claire's mom. Um, so we talked about characters being out of character. So it's very similar to that. But today, what I want to teach you is that characters are a lot like people because they are complex. Complex is the opposite of simple, right? Complex means there are many different sides to us. And, I think about Teddy. You've been getting to know Teddy really well through his little messages. The fact that he can be shy one day and a little bit outgoing the next and fierce on another day all shows that he is complex. He's not just one way, right? And just like that, people and characters are the same. We are not just one way. Um, so I want to show you. One of my favorite books, and I know many of you have read this series, but one of my favorite books or series is the Ramona Quimby series by Beverly Cleary. And I love her, I think, because she is such a complex character. And so I chose her to use today as an example. And so I've chosen Ramona, and if you know her, you'll appreciate this. But I tried to think of all the different traits that describe her, knowing that the traits I'm choosing may actually seem in a way opposite. Right? So we have brave, right? And then stubborn, right? I have cooperative, right? There's this one story where she decides to play with this little girl, Willa Jean, even though she does not want to. She does it anyway, and she's being so cooperative. However, I've chosen this word, mischievous, down here in green, because Beezus, her sister, and Ramona, they were trying to get out of making dinner. And so they decided to act really, really good so that their parents would not make them help with dinner. And I'm like, oh, that is sneaky and mischievous. When she's also all of these things like creative, cooperative, cheerful, stubborn. And do you see how I've named the traits? And I've also, most importantly, given you some proof. She's stubborn because, and I gave you a little part of the story. She's brave, and I gave you a little evidence from the story. She's cheerful, little evidence from the story. And when I look at this, I zoom out and I look at this, I realize, gosh, she is so complex because a lot of these traits almost seem, they're not opposites. They don't seem necessarily they would go together. And so what I want you to do today is I want you to think about a character you know really well from your story. It could be the one that you thought about last week. You could be in a totally new book by now, and it might be someone different. But first, think about a character. Next, I want you to just list traits. That's what I did first. What you see in color, that came first. And if it works for you to do a little web like I've done, do that. If you're more of a list person, do that. But I want you to list 5 or 6 different traits to describe your character. And then I want you to make sure you give a little bit of evidence from the story to show why. That's very important. Don't just say brave, kind, generous, cheerful. Give evidence from the story. And you can do this in a notebook, on a piece of paper, it doesn't really matter. And then I want you to take a look at your traits and think to yourself, do any of these show that my character is complex, that they have more than one side, right? And I would love to hear your thoughts. And I think, some of you may have to think really hard about this. Because if you're at the beginning of your story, you may need to read. You may need to read a little longer today to get to know your character, to be able to see. Because to do this, you need to have lots of traits. So if we take Edward Tulane right now, let's try it with Edward. Um, what are some traits we would use to describe Edward? Shout them out. You probably said vain. That one came up a lot, didn't it? Vain, prideful. Um, he thought a lot of himself. He loved his own clothes, especially at the beginning of the story. He was so arrogant. He didn't listen. But well, how else was he? Think about how he was with Sarah Ruth. Wasn't he so tender with her? He wanted to help her. He loved her. He didn't mind. Yeah, some of you are probably thinking that he didn't mind when she just sucked on his ear. He was so complex. And that's what I mean, that you can be both arrogant, vain, and prideful, but also really tenderhearted. And that can exist in the same character, in the same person. So today, I would love for you to grab a piece of paper or a notebook and and have that beside you as you read. I want you to read for 30 minutes, 45 minutes if you can keep going, and then create either a list or something like this where you are listing many of the traits with some evidence to back it up. And then think to yourself, does this show that my character is complex? Are they complicated? And my guess is the answer will be yes. Yes, they are. Because characters are like people and we are complicated. All right, guys, have fun reading today. Can't wait to talk to you on Google Classroom, and I will see you later. Happy reading.